Welcome to Slash Forward. This week we start a new series with the 1980s classic creature feature, Critters. If you've always wanted a pet with multiple rows of razor teeth and poison-barbed projectile spines, this might be the channel for you. Let's get to it. We open on a prison asteroid in Sector 17, a known garbage sector. We learn from a flawless English alien narration that a ship is docking with a shipment of fresh krites ready for containment. But we soon learn they're up to something, and they manage to bust out and flee into open space. The asteroid warden calls in his most brutal and effective bounty hunters, tasked with finding and destroying the krites before they can feed. Then we transition to down on the farm, on Earth, where Helen Brown is serving up fresh country looks and a finger-licking breakfast. Despite the idyllic setting, we soon see April selling out her brother and Jay threatening to flay his son Doug. A rare insight into the seedy underbelly of rural Americana. Down at the town jail, we meet Charlie, the village drunk, complaining of picking up intergalactic transmissions in his fillings. He's encouraged by Sheriff Harvey to go ahead and shut up and get back to work, as the capitalistic model is dependent on a complacent and productive working class. Meanwhile, the hunters have locked in on the escaped ship's LoJack and spend some time downloading a very Eurocentric view of Earth culture. Through this process, one of them settles in on borrowing the chiseled visage of Johnny Steele to help with blending in. Back on Earth, we establish that Charlie works for the Browns and Doug is a pyro with access to a dangerous amount of explosive material. Eventually, April rolls up with city slicker Steve, who she's invited to dinner. Although before he's even close to cleaning his plate of its fine victuals, she drags him off. Jay expresses concern about his oversexed daughter, which is fortuitous as she only drives Steve a short distance to the barn, where she then pressures him into a sexually explicit situation. Just then, the Krite ship rumbles through the sky, causing Charlie to spit up his whiskey and creating a disturbance deep in Ma Brown's loins, right as her passions are being reignited by the playful musings of Jay Steele. Jay Brown decides to go have a look-see at what's been disturbing the soil on his property and takes Brad with him. They venture into the field at dark and find themselves face down in cow entrails thanks to the Krites. Just about that time, Deputy Jeff shows up, and when a ball darts out in front of him, he hits the gas straight into a ditch. Intent on taking revenge against what he assumes was a dog, he ends up getting dragged under his cruiser and feasted upon. Shortly thereafter, the hunters land and find the feeding has started. Despite technically being too late, they begin their hunt anyway. While back at the farm, they find the phone dead and the power out, requiring Jay to go into the cellar. He discovers evidence of a hungry critter lurking about, confirmed when he discovers a live one, and while he thinks better of touching it, he gets mauled nonetheless. Although Doug and Helen do manage to drag him up the stairs where the cool night air stings his open wounds. The still fresh hunter decides poetically to take on the appearance of a dead man, and they juice it toward town. At the barn, April and Steve are still in the early stages of their sexual exploration. Steve attempts to adjust the radio blindly, reaching out with his hand and pulling back a nub. The Krite then dives in and sucks out his belly. Brad, responding to the sound of the screams, feeds the Krite a live explosive so they can get out of there. The family decides to run for it, but finds the truck shredded and Steve's car occupied by a big-ass Krite. They retreat to the house, pursued by a pack of carnivorous tumbleweeds. Jay's lost a step since his baseball days, so while Helen loads the shotty as it's aimed at her face, Brad goes around the side of the house to unlock the door. Back in town, Johnny Steele walks into the alley swinging meat, looking for Krites and intimidating the locals for reasons unknown. They belly up to the bar and order some Krites, which they don't take kindly to around these parts. In the ensuing confrontation, they fail to endear themselves to the locals, and the second bounty hunter continues his spontaneous transformations. Back at the homestead, Ma screams about the Winders, which Brad recognizes as a cry for help, so he tenderly checks in on the mental state of Helen and April. But before long, old Santa Krite starts coming down the chimney to eat that ass, boy. After Helen takes a poison-tipped spine to the neck, they retreat to the master bedroom. In the process, Brad takes out one Krite and forces another to hide out in the toilet. With reports coming in from all over town, Harv finally decides to make his way to the Brown household, where more gunfire than usual has been heard. Meanwhile, Brad volunteers to go for a phone, but finds his steel horse knocked about by a giant Krite. He leaves on foot and flags down a cruiser where he finds Charlie, acting odd, and finally someone gives the bounty hunters some info they can use, the whereabouts of some Krites. So right as the Browns shoot their way out, the hunters arrive and start shooting their way in. Brad follows them in to retrieve the family cat. When he finds it, he's put in the unfortunate position of facing down a giant Krite, which gets yeeted into the front yard where the family's standing around. It rolls off with April and Brad pursues it deep into the woods, where he meets up with Charlie, following the call of his teeth, and they arrive at the ship. Brad sneaks in and plinks the bar, bringing April back enough to slip out. He leaves behind an unlit parting gift, which Charlie rectifies with his lucky bottle of hooch. Knowing the end is near, the Krites passive-aggressively blow up the Brown residence before also exploding. The spacemen leave, rewarding Brad's warrior spirit with an iPhone 4. They survey the damage the next morning when, through the power of space tech, they find a button for unexploding nearby recently exploded houses, providing the happy ending they felt we, the audience, needed in order to accept this movie. Critters, released in 1986, was one of the stronger entries in the slew of 80s small creature series that came out. I would rank it maybe a little bit behind Gremlins, probably ahead of Troll, and definitely ahead of Ghoulies. If you enjoyed the video, I'd love for you to become a part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.